everyone. Welcome back to the Accent America podcast. Today, I am joined by Candace Dudley, host of the Better Brave Solopreneur podcast, where we're covering everything from starting a podcast and choosing the right gear to networking through podcasting, pitching yourself, inviting guests, growing your show, getting on podcasts, even without video, and so much more. Messy action, everything. I just jumped from the call with her and I'm so pumped. I learned so much. We even talked about SEO for podcasting and why you should start podcasting. So this podcast is for you if you've been on the fence with starting your podcast or you already have a podcast and you want to take it to the next level. Candace also will share her journey and proudest moments and her favorite podcast. So let's dive in.
Welcome to the Acta Numbreda podcast. I'm Minty, and here we'll talk about business, freelance, mindset, education, mental health, life, personal growth, and everything to help you overcome your fears, know yourself, and create the life and career of your dreams. Episodes in English and Spanish every week.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Acta Numbreda podcast. Today, I'm so excited because I have Candace Dudley. She's the host of the Better Brave podcast, and she is your go-to person for everything podcast. And I'm so excited because I, as a podcast host, I have so many questions for you, Candace. So for people, first of all, for people who don't know you, if you had to introduce yourself, what you do, who you help, like what do you do on a daily basis, who do you usually help, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to dive into all the things we're going to talk about today. A quick, long story short snapshot of my journey is that I started out as a teacher. I taught for 13 years, and in the last 3 years, I had my own children. So I had 3 babies, kind of bing, bing, bing. They're 9, 8, and 6 now. But at the time when they were babies and toddlers, I really realized that I came home and just felt so exhausted from teaching. And I knew I needed to do something different. But when you go to school to be a teacher, there's not really much else you can do, you don't think. So what happened was I started dabbling in network marketing, and I don't do that anymore, but that was my gateway into entrepreneurship. It happened to be a wellness community. And so I started doing accountability coaching, and just things transformed one nudge after the next. Getting a life coaching certification, getting a meditation and mindfulness coaching certification. I was a big believer in just following that gut intuition, which we were just talking about before we hit record, and not necessarily knowing why or having the full picture yet, but knowing that it would lead to the next thing. So eventually, it did take about 3 years, but I had a hard conversation with my husband. I ended up taking a leave of absence from school. They granted it, and that kind of started this. And so I'm 3 years out of the classroom now, and all the pivots and things I've made and has led me to podcasting. And actually, I think podcasting led me here because I started podcasting while I was still teaching. So over 3.5 years ago now, I started podcasting again on that nudge, on that whim of I know I'm supposed to do this, but I don't know why. I don't even have a plan in the beginning. I had no plan. I hit record one day, just knew I had to rip the Band-Aid off. And so that was the thing that was there all along. And it dawned on me about a year ago. I'm like, this is what I'm most excited about, even through burnout, even through all the pivots that I had to make. The podcast was always there. So it's kind of vamped into solopreneurship type focus, entrepreneurship focus on the podcast, but I love to help people with their podcasts, with guesting on podcasts. I edit people's podcasts. So really anything from start to finish in podcasting, I help people do that.
Oh, wow. I love it. And it sounds like I could use your services because sometimes I'm like, I love this, and it brought me so many opportunities with I want to talk about in the future, of course, because it's such a hot topic. I believe that it's quite untapped in the market, I feel, but I've always loved podcasts. I remember going to my 9 to 5 as well, 10 years ago, and I was listening to podcasts every single day for
Same.
hours and hours and hours. And now, and I remember back then, podcasts they were not video podcasts. Nowadays, there's too many of that, which I enjoy, not gonna lie, but there's something about that. It's like the radio, you feel like a
Yes.
fly in the wall, and you're hearing two people chit-chatting, but you're also learning. It's done wonders for me listening to podcasts, but I feel like podcasting in the last few years has exploded. And as a producer, I would like to ask you, what's the one thing that you feel that people usually get wrong when starting a podcast?
Yeah. I think it's just trying to talk to everyone is one common mistake, thinking that that's going to be a helpful thing. And really, it ends up being that you're talking to no one. So if you can narrow that down and get really specific, whether it's you want to talk to moms or you want to talk to solopreneurs or whatever it might be, but if you can narrow it down, um, at least the title and that type of thing, that's really helpful, and it makes it so that people can search for you a lot easier. So think about what you would when you're wanting help. Just today, I was typing into Instagram or wherever, um, podcast services contracts. I need to upgrade my contracts that I have for people. So what would you search for, and what are things that you would type in? Those things, if you can put them in your description, in your title, that will go a long way in people being able to find you. And then you can you can make your episodes cover more things than that, but that's how you're going to get people to get, to your show, starting to check it out. But that is one common thing of just trying to talk to everyone, because it can feel scary to narrow it down, but you end up reaching so many more people when you do.
Right. You reminded me of a quote from one of my favorite copywriting mentors. I'm a copywriter and I love to talk about marketing copywriting. So I'm going to bring it to the table. But her name is Alex Catoni from the Copy Posse. And she says that she always says this, and it's just like ingrained in my brain, but it's so true. Like if you try to talk to everyone, you're talking to no one. So you need to niche down. I know that some people don't like to niche down. I mean, I'm an ADHD person. Of course, I have many interests. Podcasting is one of them. But I feel like if you start, when you're getting started, maybe niche down and then maybe you can open up. There's a podcast that I love. My favorite podcast is The Diary of a CEO. You probably heard it. And when it started, I remember it was like very business focused. And now Stephen Bartlett, the host, is just talking about so many different topics that have nothing to do with business, but it still has like its own imprint. Like it still has his essence, which I love.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it makes total sense. And now this is a question that I had for later on, but you just touched on a point that I really, really want to go into detail. So I want to know, what's your take on solo episodes versus what we're doing right now? So interviews versus solo episodes, what do you feel is working better these days? Or does that depend on the creator, if the podcast is new, or what do you think?
It really depends on what your goal of your podcast is. If your goal is to position yourself and sell your services and things like that, or your products, then you want to go heavier on the solo episodes. I've heard numbers before, but if you think about 2/3 solo episodes, 1/3 guest, that can work, just because otherwise what it can turn into is it might look like you are really good at interviewing guests, but maybe your audience isn't going to see you as the expert that can help them with what you can help them with. So that's one thing to think about. The other thing is, guesting is awesome though, because, and I don't know that I'm at that mark. I'm probably more 50-50 because I love having guests on. But the piece that is really great with that is the connections that are made and getting in front of new audiences, and just even host to host. It's so fun because some of them, I know we said this before, but some of them turn into my clients, or I've connected them with people I know that I'm like, oh, you need this person, or go interview this. That ripple effect is huge. And so depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to increase your audience, make connections, then having guests and things makes sense. I know some people don't like to have guests that compete with their offers, and that's just whatever you prefer. I don't mind actually having guests on where our offers are similar. I think there's so much abundance that the right people are going to fit me and the right people are going to fit you. And even though I might have the exact same offer as someone else, our personalities, how we do it, like our style is not going to be the same. It can't. We're different people. So I'm not a believer in saying you can't be on my podcast if we have similar offers. Come on my podcast. I love it. I love to hear your take. And if a client doesn't fit with me, I can send them to you and vice versa. So I know some people get a little questionable about that, but that's just something that I don't believe that is going to harm anybody.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I also feel the same. And I've had so many other copywriters and marketers in my podcast. Actually, I love interviewing them because I get to learn so much out of them. And it's like you make contacts, you make friends, then you end up working together. Sometimes if you have too much on your plate, then you can refer
Yep.
them, or if you feel like they're a better fit for one of your clients, you can refer them, and vice versa. Like there's, like you say, there's so much opportunity out there. And I'm talking to you from Argentina. I'm Argentinian, born and raised. So English is not my native language, and I'm still doing this and putting this out there and working like I would say like 95% of my clients are in English speaking countries. So I feel like, and sometimes I'll have Americans coming to my podcast, like you and other copywriters, and I'm not afraid to show them to my audience because, yeah, that's what I want. I want them to take something out of it to learn. Otherwise, like if you're not offering value to your audience, then why should they keep coming back, right? But something that you said, I feel like this is one of the greatest things about podcasting nowadays, especially with having guests or being in other podcasts, is it I feel that it's a very untapped still area to network. And for people like me, I mean, I'm super awkward in person. Like I just struggle so much. Like,
Me too.
people, yeah, they're like, just make eye contact and then strike up a conversation. I would try doing that at maybe a networking event, and then maybe I'll strike up a conversation. I don't know how to continue. I'm like, yeah, bye. It's so different with podcasting because there are things that you have to talk about because, okay, this is what we're going to talk about, and you connect at a very deep level. And I've made such amazing contacts that then became clients of mine, or that I worked with, or have helped me, or people I became friends with, or people who chose to work with me. So I feel like, yeah, I would like to hear your story. If you have stories, maybe from yourself or from your clients on that topic, like networking through podcasting, even though if it's something that you're actually not actively looking for.
No, I always am. I think podcasting is a great way to network. It's my favorite way to network, actually. I'm like you, the in-person stuff, I'm very introverted, and podcasting lets you kind of skip the small talk, which I don't love. It's kind of draining, and you just get to dive right into deep things, and I love that. So for sure, that's definitely a great way to network. A story that I have probably about a year or so ago, one of my entrepreneurial besties, she is like the connector of people. So I was like, I need some great guests, like with a great story. And she gave me like 5 people that she was in a membership with, like a high level membership. And I had them all on the show. And yeah, they turned into one of them. I started doing work for her. I had connected another one. Anyways, it was just this ripple effect of people, and I'm in the United States. These people were from Canada. So it just was like amazing the connections you can make just because of one single guest you had, one friend you had on the podcast, and it just goes from there. But great way to network. One thing that's been working really great for me is being on Threads. I actually was kind of skeptical right away. I thought I don't need to be on another app. The amount of that's how we found each other was
Mhm.
over on there. The amount of guests and connections and things like that has just been really a powerful tool. So you can utilize a lot of those things. And I know we're going to talk about this later, but we can chat further into guesting and ways to go about it and that type of thing too, if you want.
Yeah, for sure. And before we go into that, because I don't want to miss on this particular part of the podcasting is, I would like to ask you, what's the best way for a podcaster to build meaningful connections? So not only with their guests, but also with their audiences, because
Mm.
yeah, you can build amazing relationship with your guests. It seems like easier because we're like now we're talking and probably we'll continue talking because then I'm gonna be like, hey Candace, the podcast is live, and then I'm gonna tag you and then we're gonna chat. Maybe you'll have me on my podcast, whatever. But what would you recommend people listening who maybe have already a podcast or are thinking of starting your podcast? And for you to know, my audience, most of them are business owners. Some of them do have podcasts and they're listening to you. So what is a good advice that you have for just keeping and building those relationships with your guests and with your audience?
Sure. Well, you nailed the guesting part. That part, it's like an instant connection. You follow each other on your socials. It's an instant like fan to fan connection where you cheer each other on, and that part is easy, especially when you mesh together. Like when you find a really great guest and have a conversation, it is so fun and uplifting that whenever you see them post something, you want to share it. You want to cheer them on. So that is always, you know, I think the easiest part. With your audience though, one thing I think is really important is being consistent or being upfront and letting your audience know if you are doing seasonal episodes and if there is going to be a break, how long is it going to be? And that consistency lets your audience build trust with you. You know, they know you're going to show up. They know that you're going to have an episode out every Tuesday. So you're part of their routine in the morning and listening to you. And just making sure that you are giving value. Sometimes people want to gatekeep so much information and you're worried that you're going to run out of it if you give it all away for free. And I'm not saying you have to give everything away for free. Obviously, our knowledge and things we deserve to be paid for those things. You're allowed to make money, but just know you're going to continue to learn new things. You're going to continue to have all this information, and I don't think you should worry about necessarily what you're giving away for free. Like I said, you don't have to give the whole like farm away for free, but providing value and really being relatable too, sharing some highs and lows. I don't have every episode be like peppy and everything's amazing. If you had a low season or something, I think it's okay to share what you learned from it or what you're doing to get out of it. So kind of documenting what's going on and letting them have a little insight into you, not just that you are like robotic or like just this business, but you're a human being too. So having some humanness and being consistent with your episodes will go a long way.
I love that. And this reminds me of a topic we've been discussing off camera, something I'm really, like I could yap about this for hours. It's the concept of messy action. I was just listening to your latest podcast interview, and you were talking about messy action, and I actually showed you, like people can actually see it. It's here, no lie. I have this like a post-it that says messy action, because sometimes you overthink everything and then you're never ready. Like if you overthink, you'll never be ready. So I'm a huge fan of messy action. And I realized that for me, every time that I really did something in my life that, was like taking a huge leap that then, maybe helped me close my dream client or, talk to this person that I wanted to reach out to or have an amazing guest in my podcast that I was like, no, there's just no way this person's going to come to my podcast. And they have like huge following and I admire them. And all of a sudden they're like there. I'm a huge fan of messy action because usually that happens when I'm like, you know what? F it. Like, I'm just going to go do it.
Yes. Yes.
So I want to ask you something, and this is messy action for podcasting. I don't know about you, but I feel like every podcast enjoyer likes to go on a long walk or a hike with a nice podcast. But sometimes
yes,
the thoughts come to your head, and maybe for me, this question is particular for me, but I feel like someone else could probably take advantage of this question. I make a lot of video episodes. What do you think about the messy action of being like, maybe I'm walking and all of a sudden, like, I had this epiphany and I'm like, I need to record this. It's maybe noisy out there, but I just want to talk about this. And it just comes out so naturally when you're walking. So what do you think about that type of messy action when it comes to podcasting? Yay or nay?
I love it. I love it. That happens to me all the time. And I'll have to get in my voice recorder on my phone and just spew it out so that I don't forget it, because we think we're going to remember. And that's the biggest lie we tell ourselves. But when you're acting on that messy action, to me, that is following intuition and following downloads that we all get. And it's no surprise that it happens when I just listened to your episode where you were talking about Mel Robbins' book, and I'm in the middle of it, the Let Them book, and you're on the beach. Yes. And I loved it. And I honestly don't know that I've heard one where I could hear the waves in the background and the wind. And I thought that was cool and awesome and so unique. Sometimes things are so curated and they sound so perfect. And I think that messy action though, then you just know you're in full alignment with when you're recording a podcast, especially. That's how a lot of my solo ones come out. I don't even write notes. It's just like, oh, light bulb, run to my computer, hit record, has to come out. Let's just see what happens. So I love it. I think it shows that you're in full alignment. And I think when you can work in alignment, that is when, like you said, the dream clients come, the amazing guests come to your show. People and things like that get brought into your life that you wouldn't expect in your wildest dreams, talking about starting up a podcast, for example, that's all messy action. There's no way you can know all the parts of it. I still don't know all the parts of it. There's other programs and things that you can constantly be learning and doing. In the beginning, you have to just start with one thing. You have to just go with it. I didn't even know how to edit or anything my first episode. So I just hit record and whatever came out, I just was like, all right, next step, figure out how to get this out onto the platform or to the podcast, platforms, and just do one step at a time, knowing that repeated action is going to get you in a place where we're talking to you and you have a podcast and you have 100 plus episodes, things like that. But it starts with just tiny, small, messy actions.
Yeah, I love that. And it's just like, it's also inspired action. It's not just messy, it's also inspired action. I think it's Mary Forleo or Amy Porterfield, or I think actually both of them talk about those topics and those terms. But this reminds me, I remember my first podcast. I was interviewing a friend who has a podcast. You would love him to be on your podcast. He talks about mental health and that type of stuff. He just recently wrote a book, and he's going to be on my podcast this Saturday. So I'm really excited to have to have him again. And I remember he's a pro at this. And I was just like, hi everybody, welcome to the sorry, can I start again? And he was like, no, Mitchie, continue. You're live now. Go on. I'm like, oh no, but I should. And he's like, everybody listen to this. This is her first episode. So this has to be like this. They have to know what it is like.
Yes.
And he was like, when we stopped recording, he was like, please do not edit that out. This is your first episode. You're going to look back on this. And actually people started like commenting on that. It was so funny. I was like, you were actually right about it. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's good to edit your podcast for sure, because you want it to be super crisp. But when you're getting started, I think that's also what makes you more, it humanizes you as well.
Yes, I love that you left that in there, because it is such a relatable feeling of, oh wait, I'm not ready, let's back up. But you learn so much more when you hit record on that first episode than you ever do spending time Googling and researching. I'm tell you what, just hit record if it's a podcast or any goal that you have, just dive in, do one thing, because you're going to learn so much more from your experience than you do from any type of research that you could do.
Yeah, for sure. And talking about Adam, this guy, something that takes me to the next question that I had in mind is, I remember he once told me that he had a girl, and when he was just getting started, he had a girl who has like 1 million followers or more. No, I think she has more followers. I don't remember, but we're talking millions. And he just sent her like messy action. He just sent her a message like, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? Just like that. And she was like, oh, yes. So now I want to ask you this. So what is your go-to advice for pitching yourself to be featured on other podcasts? And what would be your advice as well? What do you usually do yourself or tell your clients to do to get a yes from a high profile guest that you want to have, or someone that you're like, oh, I don't know, I should do it?
Yes. Okay. There's a couple parts there. Let's talk about getting a guest on your show that you're nervous to ask. I've done the same thing. Just send them the message. They're human too. And I would say more than half of the ones that I've sent to, they said, yes, absolutely, would love to. Send me the link. A couple haven't, but the worst that's going to happen is that they're going to say no, or they're going to ghost you. And then life moves on. What? We're all still alive. It doesn't matter really.
But do you usually slide into their DMs, or do you email them? What's your go-to?
I've done the DMs part, but usually it's someone that I've followed along and I'm a fan of. So with that, I think what can help you stand out is in that message, touching on some things that only someone that's followed them for a long time would know. It shows that you are interested in them, you're invested in them, and that you aren't just some random that just came today, know nothing about them, and are just saw their follower account and wanted them on your show. It shows that you are a fan and that you love their message and things like that. So if you can get personal with that, that's really helpful. And then as far as pitching yourself to get on shows, I mentioned Threads. Right now, that community on there is awesome. And a lot of people, like you did, and I've seen it so many times, they're posting either an application link or just a post that says, hey, I'm looking for guests that cover one of these topics. And if that's you, what an easy segue to just comment and say, hey, that's me. I could talk about this, this, and that. And then try to take that conversation over onto Instagram, obviously, where you can actually DM someone. But that is one spot. But if you're going to take it a step further, what I do a lot is I will listen. Well, I love to listen to podcasts. So I'll listen to podcasts. And when I find ones that are really aligned with me and my message and have some similarities, but also differences, then I'm also kind of a very organized type A. So I have a tracker. I have it in a bundle that's like $7. If I can send you the link to that. It's a great place to start if you want to guess, because it has in there a few different resources, but one is a tracker. So if you find, let's say one day I'll look for different podcasts and they might link together, like a guest on a podcast that I end up liking might also have their own show. So then I'll put down that information in my tracker, the show's name, whatever I can find about the host, and links to their socials and ways to contact them. A lot of times they'll have a website, email address, stuff like that. So if you can find a way to contact them, especially with an email address, you can then send the email and pitch yourself. What I like to send with that email is, and first of all, before you send any emails or messages, make sure you've listened to their show. I think that I get a lot of pitches being a host, pitches every week in my emails, and you can see a copy paste so quick.
Hi, Eggs. Yeah, I know.
Yes, where you can just see that they didn't listen to your show, and yet they're sending you this generic email pitching themselves or pitching their client to be on the show. And it goes a long way. Even if you've just listened to one episode or a couple parts of episodes, it goes a long way when you then get that email ready to send them, because you should mention why our audiences would connect, why we would be a fit. Scroll through their episodes too and make sure that they've had guests on before. They might not be taking guests, and then they won't want your email. So if all you see is solo episodes, probably going to need to move on. They're probably not taking guests. So just kind of doing your research ahead of time is really helpful. The other things in that tracker, then I have spots, then when I do send the email, I'll toggle that I've sent it. And then that way I can track like who I've heard back from, what they say, stuff like that. So the other thing I like to attach to that email is just a 1-page media sheet. So in that bundle I talked about, I have a template, and it's just brief, and it just gives a quick bio of you, a picture of you, links to things, your socials, ways that they could contact you, stuff like that. And then what I really like to put on there is what are some topics or questions they could ask you. Sometimes as a host, it's really nice if they come in with, hey, ask me these 2 things. That can be helpful in navigating the show. And it's just a quick snapshot where I can pull it up, and I can usually tell if the vibe or the things they want to talk about, I can tell pretty quick if it's going to be a fit for my show or not. And then that way you can say yes or no. And it's okay if you get a no, then move on. It's not the end of the world, but don't let one no stop you from asking, because a lot of times people are excited to. And if you do have a podcast and you like the hosts enough, or you like their shows that you've listened to enough, go ahead and offer a swap, because that usually works out pretty well, because most people are like perfect, and that's like an equal trade almost. But still, people will take on guests. I take on guests that don't have podcasts all the time. So that's does that make sense? The kind of the flow that I like to use.
Yeah, for sure. We do something similar. I do have guests. I don't have podcasts because I feel like, this person has, or maybe they don't even have a big following, but I know they know a lot about the topic they're talking about. So I wouldn't say no to anyone who I think has something interesting to say that I think that my audience would take something out of it. On that note, there's something that I want to ask you that is completely unrelated, but at the same time, it makes a lot of sense. And it's a quite personal question, but I would like to know what inspired you to start with podcasting.
Actually, I started when I was hosting accountability groups for other moms. I had just had my 3 babies and, I had gained 50 pounds of pregnancy weight every time. I was looking for something to feel better and just feeling really alone on that like postpartum journey. So I joined a wellness community and I loved it. So I started hosting groups and things for other moms and it was going fantastic. And I just felt this nudge and calling that I really wanted to just make sure that I was providing them with really great free value. So my podcast has changed so much, but it started as mindset things I would share, personal development books I was reading, mom life stuff. So some of my OG original listeners from the very beginning, it started with that and it has just transformed into more of an, entrepreneurial, solopreneur podcasting focus with the way that I have grown and shifted and pivoted. So but that's what it was in the very beginning. And I just felt really called to share my story, mostly because I felt alone being home with my babies. It's the best time of your life and I was so grateful for it, but also you're home alone and feeling like, gosh, is anyone else feeling like me? And I just remembered not feeling like there was a platform or anything I had listened to or read where it was like me. So for anyone thinking about starting a podcast, thinking, oh, it's already been done before and there's no room for me. There really is, because your story and your take on something is going to be so different than the next person. I bet you could have another person on here that does something like I do with podcasting and they're going to have a completely different story. They might not be a mom. They might, things like that. So you have a story and it's worth sharing. That was one big hang up I had in the beginning because I thought I have a boring life. Who's going to want to hear this? And how will I have something to say every week? And now here I am over 150 episodes later of, no, we all do have a story and it's really worth sharing and it's going to impact someone and someone needs to hear from you. They're waiting for you. So
Yeah, that's true. Every story is unique, and I feel like I remember when I started on social media and podcasting, I also thought the same thing. I'm like, who's going to want to listen to me? I'm not even an English, like a native English speaker. Who cares about what I have to say? And I'm like, well, but I do have my own like life story, the things I went through. It doesn't mean that my story is not important because maybe they don't share the same country or the same culture, but that's actually what makes it interesting, the differences, and also the people that resonate with you. Like maybe, starting out, it was just moms who were feeling the same and they're like feeling heard and, feeling like, because this is the thing with podcasting. And I feel like it is, for me at least, everyone who has a podcast and who has a following in podcast, they have like fans. I'm not a fan of the word fan, but you know what I mean? Because
yeah,
you have them in your ears for so much time that you feel like you know them because I overshare in podcasts. I don't do that in my social media with my short clips, but podcast is just oversharing always.
yeah.
So people who
Yes.
listen to my podcast, they know everything about me because I'm a yapper. And I'm like, sometimes I overshare and I actually don't care. I'm happy with that. But I feel like for people who want to build an audience, like a very fan based ride or die audience, it's just podcasts.
Yes.
That's the way to go.
Yes. Oh, definitely. For sure. Yeah.
And now for people listening now, entrepreneurs or people with like you or I, when we got started, and we just wanted to share our journey doing whatever thing we were doing at the time. My podcast, for example, started being a fitness podcast because I was obsessed with
Okay.
fitness. And then I changed the name and it was all about business and personal development. So yeah, things change. Everything change. We all
Yes.
change. Actually, one of
Don't be
my
afraid to
favorite.
pivot.
Yeah,
Yes.
for
Don't be
sure.
afraid. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid. I think it gets a bad rap. Like, oh, you're changing your mind again. Oh, what are you doing now? Like, it's never going to work. A man would pivot and nobody would blink an eye. Don't let that, be on you. Pivot as soon as you feel out of alignment because you know pivot, change it. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, for sure. And now for people who want to start, maybe they just want to get started, but they don't know what to do. So for them, what is the easiest way for you to like set up a professional sounding podcast on a budget? Let's say that they just want to give it a try and they're like, okay, I don't want to spend so much money on it. Like, we're just getting started we're going to see what
Right.
happens.
I have a whole guide that I put together. It's free. I'll send you the link to that.
Oh,
They can
that.
download it. It's a PDF. Yeah. So I'll give you that. But I would say just get a microphone. Just get a microphone. It doesn't need to be expensive. I think mine's like $40 on Amazon. You don't just let's try it out before we buy big expensive equipment. And then really you just have to figure out what platform you can use to record. I use Audacity or Zoom. There's a lot of things out there, but just figure out what's going to work for yours. Both of those have free options. So you could start there. And then the next thing is really you just need to know what hosting platform you're going to use to get your podcast on so that it can be sent out to all of the things like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all those things. I use Buzzsprout. It's like $12 a month for what it does for me. I'm very happy with that very minimal cost. So you can really dabble. And I think they have a free option too, but there's a lot of platforms. So you don't have to use that one, but that's a quick Google search, but just look for hosting platforms because then it's going to send it out. I think that was one of the big things that it's hard to wrap your head around when you haven't done. It's like, how does your podcast get out to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all these places?
I remember when I did it. I don't remember. I remember when I did it, but I don't remember what I did because I think you need like an RSS, something like that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how I managed to do it, but I was just like, I Googled it. And okay, let's try.
Yes.
And it worked.
So if you use a platform like Buzzsprout, you just upload your audio. And now if you want video, then you need to do something else. But I just use audio. I know we were going to talk about that too and our take on audio and video, and we can do that next. But you just are going to upload the episode and then you can schedule it to be published. And in that site, you just follow the directions to set up, it's a couple clicks or like a copy and paste of the RSS feed thing. But then it's just going to send it to all those. Once that's set up, it's done. And it's just going to send it to all those platforms every time for you. So that's what's nice about finding a hosting platform and not trying to manually get your podcast on.
Sure.
I don't even know how you would do that. You probably would quit after the first one. So those are really the only thing. Get a mic, hit record, and then get it up on to a hosting platform. That is what you start with. And then when that becomes you and it's easy to do that, then you can figure out how to maybe edit a little tiny bit or add an intro to your show. You add those things on, but you don't let that stop you in the beginning because you don't know. You're not going to know everything. You're not supposed to. And your followers, like you said, they're going to love to see that journey. They're going to love to see that beginning messy part. It's going to be inspiring because somebody else could do that. When everything's so curated, we just see it and we're like, oh, I could just never do that. And so then that stops us. But we all start from zero. We all start from beginner status and not know what we're doing. But let yourself be a beginner because sometimes we're really hard on ourselves and we just want to jump to expert level. And that's not how anything goes. That's not how you and I got here. That's not how anybody gets there. So let yourself be a beginner.
Yeah. Again, messy action. Just go along with the flow and then you'll eventually learn. It's like, it's like you're trying to pigeonhole yourself and like at some point you need to leave the nest and fly. Maybe you'll fall, but it's not going to hurt that much. It's just a podcast. Like you're not actually jumping. But you mentioned video and I actually wanted to talk about that. What's your take on video podcast, which is what we're doing right now versus audio? Because I'm going to be honest with you. I like video. The only reason I like video is because it gives you content for YouTube as well. And well, now I lost the name. Spotify also has video podcasts, and all of the big podcasts like Call Her Daddy, Him and Her Show. All of them now have video format, and it's easy because then you can use like Opus AI, any of those AI programs that gives you like the snippet, and then you can upload it to your socials. Just for convenience. But I'm going to be honest with you. I hate video podcasts. When I listen to podcasts, I do it from the Apple Podcast platform, but I know not everybody listens to that, but I want to hear your.
I personally am on your team with that. If I'm going to listen to a podcast, I'm probably doing something else too. And so I love to just hear audio. But I also want, if I'm scrolling social media, I do love, like, Call Her Daddy. I love being able to see a quick clip and the video. So what I think is, and there's other experts out there that, someone always knows more than you. So I don't know, you don't take everything for gold that I say, but what I would say is, depends on what platform you really want to go hard at. If YouTube is your main focus, then of course you're going to want to have video. But I will add that I know, I'm spacing on the name now, but I know of some major podcasts with millions of listeners, and they don't do video and they're still on YouTube. And the way they do it is, is they just have like a slide. So you could use Canva, for example, and you could make like a slide. And I've done this before with mine, where you can, have your title, maybe a picture of you and the guest or things like that. And then that's just what you would see. And you can have the audio on it, and you can put that on there.
That.
Yes. So if you don't like doing the video, but you want to keep YouTube, that's one option. But again, I think it's just your personal preference. So there's plenty of podcasts that are just audio that are hugely successful. But even if you are doing just audio, you can grab sound bites usually and use things like Canva or stuff to create a graphic, or you can put it on the back of a B-roll and have that sound bite playing and still reference your podcast. I know I've done those types of things too, because I just use audio. And sometimes I'll use the YouTube option with the, slides and having the audio with it. Most of my clients, I will say, do the video and audio. They like the video. That adds some different things on of what you have to learn. But if your main focus is going to be YouTube, definitely do the video, stuff like that. Or you could record like this, and then just, like you said, use an AI tool or something to grab a snippet of the video, and then you can still use the audio, as well. So I think it's whatever you like best, because if you don't like it, then you're going to find yourself skipping it, procrastinating on it, not doing it. And so you just want to go with what works for you. It's going to be different for everybody. So that would be my take on it, but I'm sure someone else would give you different advice.
No, I actually love that, because maybe, like, I'm doing video right now, but let's say one day I'm not feeling my best and I'm just feeling vulnerable and I want to share my thoughts, and I may not want to be on camera. So, you can play around with it. It's good that you have that option. Like, you can, like you said, you just put like a photo or maybe a stock video or something like that. Like, I think I did that with the beach one. I just used stock video of the beach, because I did not record myself as in video, and I was just like, F it, I'm just gonna upload it and that's it.
Yeah.
Something I want to ask you is this. I just wrote it down because I was listening to you. I was like, I need to ask her this before she leaves, because I want to know SEO as a marketing person. I know that SEO is it's not dying, but somehow is going away with the rise of AI, and it's getting harder and harder to rank with SEO nowadays. What have you seen so far in the podcasting industry? Do you think it's important? What are your, if you have a few tips to share with the audience to rank your podcast?
You definitely have to try still to use it. The nice thing about podcasts is that it is long form content. It's going to be there. It's not social media. I don't know. In the United States, we had a couple days ago, like a TikTok ban that was threatened, but then now it's back. And so, it's just a good reminder, you don't own any of your social media, platforms. And so that long form content is huge, but having titles and show notes that do have that SEO in there, that's just another thing for a business owner and a podcaster to try to wear another hat of, now I need to be an SEO expert. What I do is I utilize ChatGPT for that, but I will add in, you want to make sure that you ask your ChatGPT some questions, as far as things like, what do you need to know from me about my podcast to help me write really great SEO show notes, or give me a great SEO title? You can't just use ChatGPT and just say, I did an episode on this, send me SEO show notes. You're not going to get a great result. But if you know how to ask ChatGPT good questions, then it's a really good starting point. But I definitely think that you have to give it a try, because we have to have ways for people to find us and search for us. And so if you can work that into your titles and stuff, I think it's worth it still, even though, like you said, it is getting harder and those things are happening. We'll have to see what trends and things change. But yeah, that's what I use is ChatGPT to help me with that, because I don't feel like I'm an expert in knowing what words and whatnot. But if you know your audience, and that goes back to the very beginning of what we talked about, if you know who you're talking to and you have narrowed it down, like some words that I know I want in my show notes are solopreneur, entrepreneur, podcaster, podcast editor, things like that, that someone would search for. So yeah, but if you use ChatGPT, make sure that I like to ask it, what do you need to know from me to do this job? Because then it sends you back like a list of, 7 things. And if you answer each one, it's going to give you a much better result. And that can help you with that. If you are, wearing all the hats in your business and you can't outsource that yet, that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, it's all about prompting nowadays. And the more you talk to it, the more you train it, the better it'll do its job. And also just like seeing what's working, like you can go to your go-to podcast platform and see what other people are doing, what words are ranking for whatever topic you want to rank for, and see what's working, and like reverse engineer that. Maybe make a Google search. It still works up to this point. And then other
Yes.
tools like SEMrush could help as well. Yeah, SEO is not, it's maybe not a hot topic, but I just hope it helps somebody out there.
Yes.
So thank you for the tips. But now I want to ask you something, because I know that you're super busy. I don't want to take much of your time, and the listeners, I don't want this to turn into like a 2-hour episode, because
Yes.
I could keep going. Not gonna lie, just that's what I love about podcasts. You can keep like talking with amazing people, and you're like, oh, I'm never shutting up, and I want to hear everything.
Yeah.
But now I want to ask you 2 questions to before we close. So, what was your proudest moment as a what do you call yourself? Podcast producer? Would that
Yeah.
be a good term?
Yes. Yep. That would work.
What's your proudest moment? It could be yours, or it could be a client win.
Proudest moment. It's just something that I don't think we let ourselves think about. At least for me, sharing my wins and things. It's so much easier to share some struggle or something. I would
Oh,
have
you
to
can share a
say,
struggle and what you
yeah,
learned from it if you want. I just wanted you to flex a little, but
yes,
you
no,
can
no, no, no.
whatever floats
I
your
like
boat.
it. I know. Isn't it easier to downplay it than versus, yeah.
Mm.
No, I think just one of my highlights from last year was launching a podcast from zero with 2 of my best friends for an entrepreneurial female membership thing that we host, and just getting to take care of that part of our business. It was kind of what led me into taking on clients in the last year and things for podcasting services. So it was one of those leaps where it was like, before I was just doing it for myself. And sometimes you don't take yourself all that seriously. It's like, oh, it's just like a fun thing I'm doing. And that was the moment where I was like, I know stuff that other people don't know. And I have this skill set and it is valuable and it can be a business. And how great to be able to help other people. And in that case, my 2 best friends showcase and have a platform to share our message and lift up other people. I love podcasting. I love that it's a space for everyone to share their stories, and I think it's a chance for other people and so many kinds of people to feel seen. And I think when you have that first chance of feeling seen, you never want to give it up. And I think podcasting can do that, because someone can listen to your show and think they get me, they understand me, they see me on a deep level. So that moment, about a year and a half ago, where it just really switched in my mind of, no, it's not something I do for fun. This is something I'm really good at, passionate at, and that was a big key moment in my own journey and growth. So I think I'll go with that one.
I love that. And now, before we close with the final question, I'm super curious about this one. What's your personal favorite podcast? Maybe it could be 1 or 2, but like your top 3 podcasts,
Yeah, it's
and
funny.
why?
Yeah, I do love call her daddy, just to give just,
Love her.
when I was younger, I love the just reality TV, like just trash TV. Give me all of it. I don't have as much time to watch it now, being a mom of 3, but so I do like that. I
But
love
it's
sport.
interesting how. But wait, sorry, you're saying
Yeah.
that because I'm not a fan of reality TV, but I love Alex Cooper. Like I love her podcast, and I think it's because she's a good host. She asks good
Yeah.
questions, so it
Yes.
could be something like surface level. She can turn something that may seem surface level,
Yeah.
and she can make it very profound, which is the beauty of podcasting. So maybe
Yes.
I feel like that's why it's a good podcast. I mean, it's
Yes.
one of the
Yeah, for
top
sure.
podcasts.
And I guess I would do 2 more. One is kind of out in left field, but I played basketball in college and a big sports fan, so I love the New Heights podcast with Jason and Travis Kelce, and I also love Taylor Swift, so it's always, like, a chance to hear about her. So that one's just, like, for fun, but one I do really love too is Manifestation Babe.
Ooh, love that one.
Yeah. Do you listen to that? Yeah, she's
Yeah.
good too. I just think she makes that type of mindset and that the work that she does seems so simple. And, I think we also all have our own money stories that we come with, and that's just a topic that we can always improve on. And it's a topic, of course, that we might all want to improve on because we need money to live. So, yeah, that I would say off the top of my head, there's so many other great smaller ones too, but off the top of my head, I would say those.
There's so much out there for everyone from beat podcasts to like smaller. But I listen to both like massive podcasts like Mel Robbins. I think she just ranked one. It's crazy because I
Yeah.
remember when she started her podcast, I'm a huge Mel Robbins fan,
Same.
if you
I
can
love her too.
tell. Like my dream is to have her as a client, kid you not. And
Oh,
I'm like, I have it in my vision board. I have it written everywhere. And I'm like, are you familiar with the 7 degree separation theory? Like,
yes.
well, I just not long ago I realized I'm like 1 degree apart from her, and it's crazy. So I'm
Oh
just
my gosh.
they're like someday something's gonna happen, something's gonna happen. But it surprises me how she grew so fast. And I remember her first episode was it was a mess. And it was Mel Robbins. And I love that. It was her
Yes.
son introducing her. And she was like, this is all the mess. She didn't even edit it. And I still remember back then, it was like, oh, what was it like 2 years ago that she started? And now she's
Yeah,
number one. Like she is
I
bigger
know.
than Joe Rogan. It's bigger than Alice Cooper now. It's, it's wild. Like
Yeah.
that just goes like, I mean, of course it's Mel Robbins. She's very well known, but the fact that she made it happen in her messy action type way, because she's kind of like that. And I feel
Yes.
that that's why people love her, because
Mhm.
she's not scripted, and you can tell that.
Yeah. Yeah. She
It's
shows
just,
the uncut yeah. I love her too.
yeah.
Huge fan of hers too.
Well, hopefully one day you and I will be working with
Yes.
Mel
Now
Robbins.
I'm only yeah, with this 7 degrees of I'm 2 degrees away from her now.
Yes.
That is good to know.
Yes. Let's make it happen.
Yes.
But Candace, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And before you leave, I do want to ask you something I ask all of my guests on the show is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would have liked me to, or anything that you want to close with before?
I just want everybody that ever listens to anything I'm a part of just to know that we see you. You're not alone. I think we think we're alone all the time in our heads, that we're the only one that's going through something, and it's just not true. So don't be shy. Reach out to one of us or find someone else, but you're not alone. You can do this. You are going to figure it out. You've gotten this far in life. And I don't have to know you to know that all of us have the ability to reach whatever's on our heart, or it wouldn't be placed there. So just encouragement would be the message I would want to just leave you guys with.
Where can everybody find you?
Sure. I'm on Instagram at Candace Dudley, Threads, same thing. You can find my website, CandaceDudley.com. And then, of course, the podcast, Better Brave, Solopreneur Business Systems. So any of those, it's me. I don't have a team, so I will be the one reaching out. Feel free to DM me, tag me, whatever.
Love that. Well, we're going to leave everything in the show notes. And if anyone who's listening to this and they feel like they can be in your show or anything, should they just
Yeah.
reach out to you? Where?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Send me a message on Instagram or on my website. You can find my email address, and you can find a guesting application, all that stuff. So yeah, definitely go there. It'd be awesome to connect with you.
Yeah, don't be shy. She's amazing. Go talk to her. Candace, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and for everyone listening, thank you for staying. I appreciate you, and see you next time. Bye.